Patrick, the Education Chair at the Louisville Branch NAACP. On behalf of our President, Mr. Rao Cunningham, and the members of the NAACP, we welcome you to our fourth Education Forum in collaboration with Jefferson County Public Schools. This evening, I will act as your moderator. During the presentation, we ask that you keep your microphone muted. This action will eliminate any noise that may disturb our presenters. We will have a question and answer period at the end of the program. At this time, I will turn the forum over to Dr. John Marshall, the Chief Equity Officer of Diversity, Equity, Poverty Program, who will give the purpose of tonight's program and recognize any special guests who are in attendance. Dr. Marshall.
Good afternoon. Again, my name is John Marshall. I am the Chief Equity Officer of Jefferson County Public Schools, proud member of the NAACP. First of all, thank you to Don Dillard and team for pulling this community conversation that's going on its fourth year now with the NAACP. The purpose of this partnership and the purpose of this meeting is for us to extend our reach and extend what is going on inside of JCPS with the community and an organization that truly support us. On behalf of Dr. Marty Polio and the cabinet, thank you. I see that we have, no shock at all, Miss Diane Porter, who will be bringing greetings here right after me. But this is absolutely important for us and our community to understand what it is JCPS is doing, particularly diversity, equity, and poverty. So again, thank you. This is very important work. And the reason for having this is to make sure that all community understand that what we're doing is necessary, and their participation and understanding about our work is critical as we continue to ask for critical friends and undying support for our students in Jefferson County Public Schools. Next, you will hear from Ms. Diane Porter, School Board Chair.
Thank you, Dr. John Marshall. It's my pleasure to be here this evening, and I would like to say I totally want to thank Diversity, Equity, and Poverty and the NAACP for continuing these conversations during a pandemic when it would have been easy to say, never mind, we'll get back to it. But diversity and equity is not something that we will get back to. So thank you for your department. Thank you for the NAACP for making this possible this evening and for the other weeks also. Really quickly, I wanted just to say that thank you, but also wanted to mention the fact that last week I talked to Dr. Sam Robinson as we talk about diversity and equity. Dr. Robinson has retired, of course, from JCPS and the Lincoln Foundation, but it's still on his heart. So what we must do as we go forward is carry the message forward. So thank you to everyone that is here this evening. Please continue to be safe. We're not quite through the pandemic yet, but especially I want to thank the NAACP and Dr. John Marshall and his team and the speakers tonight for being here. It's my pleasure and my honor to be with you. Thank you.
Tonight, I have the pleasure to introduce Dr. Vanessa Mcphail and Mrs. Michelle Dillard. Dr. Vanessa Mcphail has worked in the field of education for 14 years in a variety of roles, including teacher, resource teacher, and administrative intern. She currently serves Jefferson County Public Schools at the Community Affairs as a Community Affairs Specialist in the Diversity, Equity, and Poverty Department. Dr. Mcphail earned her bachelor's degree in business management from Indiana University, her master's of arts in teaching, instructional leadership, and school administration from Bellarmine University. Dr. Mcphail earned her Doctor of Education in Education Leadership from the University of Louisville. Her research interests include Black girls, school discipline, and restorative practice talking circles in alternative schools. At this time, I introduce Dr. Vanessa Mcphail.
Thank you, Ms. Patrick, and thank you all for being here today. I am going to talk about the REAP, also known, or it stands for the Racial Equity Analysis Protocol. Sorry. All right. So I want to begin with telling you, hold on, sorry, let me put this in presentation mode. One second. There we go. All right. Okay, I want to start with telling you exactly what the REAP is and what it stands for. So REAP is the acronym, but it actually stands for the Racial Equity Analysis Protocol. So it's a tool, it's an instrument that can be used when school leadership is making decisions that impact students. The expectation is that this protocol is used for every school-based decision. Who uses it? The instrument is constructed to uncover exclusionary practices, but requires multiple perspectives. So not one person should be filtering something through the REAP, but multiple people. For the best results, a diverse group of school-based stakeholders should always be included. And then it tells you over here, sorry, when is it used? The REAP is not just for new ideas and initiatives. Schools are expected to screen their established practices using the protocol as well. Teachers are encouraged to utilize the REAP for classroom decisions, and I'll give you some examples. The REAP consists of 8 questions. I'll review those with you. How does this tool add to racial equity? Utilization of the REAP leads to more equitable decision-making for policies, practices, and procedures, especially because if any established practice proves to marginalize any student group, school leadership is expected to amend or end the practice. Okay, so in 2018, the district passed unanimously the racial equity policy. And the racial equity policy calls for more equitable, systematic practices and policies that address the inequities in our district. The racial equity policy clearly aligns with 2 of the 3 pillars, culture and climate and racial equity. So these are the highlights and the bullets for exactly what the REAP will do. It will promote racially inclusive collaboration, expand opportunity for students of color, such as gifted and talented programmatic access, impact systematic change, allow leadership to make informed decisions. When we are able to make informed decisions, we make better decisions, and we want to change systems. We want to make the REAP fibrous. Dr. Marshall refers to the word as fibrous, and when I think about the word fibrous, what comes to mind is that it is something that we do. It's not an afterthought. We continually do it. It's in the forefront of our minds. It can also evoke needed conversations about race. And if you think about the acronym REAP, the R stands for racial, therefore the focus is on race. When can we use, or when can you see examples of the REAP? Under the leadership of Dr. Shauna Stinton, who leads the SBDMs. They have done trainings where they learn to filter SBDM policies through the REAP. Policies could be dress code, homework, things of that nature. Instructional leadership team meetings, perhaps curriculum, whole staff faculty meetings, celebrations, how you look at recognition for students. Those are examples of things that you could filter through the REAP. There are 8 questions. I will read them to you quickly because it's important that you understand the context of the REAP. What is the overarching purpose? That's always number 1. Clearly state the purpose. Is the initiative or policy resourced to guarantee full implementation and monitoring? The word resource is the key word in question number 2. Resource has to do with the funds associated with that said program. Number 3, which racial or ethnic group could be inequitably affected by this policy and how? So it's a 2-part question. And the key in question 3 is which racial group. And we have specific races that need to be identified. And I'll talk about that more. Question 4 is similar to 3, but it says which racial or ethnic group will have the most concerns. The group that has the most concerns is not necessarily always the group that could be inequitably affected. But I want to point out that question 3 and 4 have 2 parts to the question. Question number 5, what unintended consequences could result from the policy? Sometimes plans, policies, and initiatives are brought about, but we don't think about the unintended consequences. Number 6, have stakeholders, your stakeholders, the community, particularly those most impacted by this decision, have they been meaningfully informed? Key word there, meaningfully informed, or involved in the discussion of this proposal? How did that process go? What was the feedback? That is important that we seek out stakeholders' feedback. Number 7, what factors may be producing and perpetuating racial inequities associated with this issue? That could be redlining, that could be systematic racism, that could be all different types of things. It really depends on the policy, proposal, or initiative that we're talking about. But does this policy or initiative deepen these inequities or does it improve them? And the last question, who is the main driver for improving racial equity for this particular proposal or initiative? It's not always the same person because it depends on what it is. Could be the principal, it could be SBDM, it could be the Board of Education, it could be the superintendent, it just really depends. This is just a link where you could find the actual template, and I'm going to display it right here. So this is the form when we talk about the REAP. This is actually what it looks like. And I just want to point out that there are 3 next step questions. After using the REAP for this program or practice, should it move forward? That's a dichotomous answer, yes or no. If yes, what changes will you make in moving forward that could be more inclusive? And then the third one says, what is the deadline on the changes before moving forward? We have to put a date to it to hold ourselves accountable. If we say that there's certain things that need to be done, then we need to hold ourselves accountable in a deadline. Okay, next, we're going to talk about some key things to remember when filtering items through the REAP or filtering a policy or practice through the REAP. First of all, answer all the questions. There were 8 questions and then 3 next step questions. Explicitly state the race and ethnicity. What are the races? Hispanic, American Indian, Alaska Native, Asian, Black, African American, Native American, white. But we cannot settle for words like low SES, at risk, marginalized, ECE and ESL. ECE stands for Exceptional Child Education, ELL, English Limited Learners. Those are not races. The races have to be identified. And here's the thing, just because you don't call out the race doesn't mean the inequities are not happening. We have to be intentional about identifying the race. Critically and thoughtfully answer the questions. Use your data and the equity scorecard to check for inequities. What other data can you use? Infinite campus, behavior. You can use attendance. You can use participation. You can use retention. It just depends, but we don't want items in the REAP that say things like I think, or we feel, or we believe. You can get data to support what it is that you're actually talking about. And the equity scorecard, which we have on the JCPS website, is a great place for data. Next, under the leadership of Dr. Florence Chang, her division came up with, it's called the Best practice guidelines for the REAP. And it's very helpful because what it does is it really identifies things that you need to keep in mind when you filter something through the REAP. Again, a team approach. One person looking at a policy or proposal by themselves, that's not a team approach. You want a team approach so you can have multiple perspectives involved. The other thing is you want to have a facilitator, somebody not to necessarily just keep time, but to manage the conversation, make sure all voices are heard, keep people on track, those types of things. Data. You can have someone responsible for bringing the data if it's applicable. It is essential that assumptions do not drive the REAP reviews and that responses are supported by data or research when it's appropriate. Dialogue. In some cases, REAPs may be conducted virtually through a shared document, but in most cases, REAPs encourage, we want dialogue. That's the most effective way. We want to be inclusive with the perspectives, and the thing here is courageous conversations, and we have to be comfortable being uncomfortable with these courageous conversations. And lastly, follow-up. Depending on the next steps of the REAP, the team members may want to develop a plan on how to follow up on identified areas of improvement. The next document is a resource that is often used in central office, and this document directly connects the tenets in the racial equity policy to said decisions. I won't read them all to you, but I'll point out an example. The decision directly impacts student learning or teachers learning. Well, that is connected to curriculum, instruction, and assessment. Or another one, let's look at number 4, making decisions on improving and addressing racial equity via professional development. That could potentially fall under the tenet of culture and climate. But what you will see in these instructions that central office follows is that it gives examples of when the REAP should be used and directly connects them to the racial equity policy tenets. I just wanted to go over some work that has been done with the REAP recently, or not recently, since 2018 when the policy was passed. So one thing is each school has its own Google folder. And in that Google folder is where all schools are to store their REAPs electronically. And the assistant SUP and the EA have access to those folders along with myself. We have done what we call random school examinations of the REAPs or random school reviews. In 2019, we looked at 5 policies that all schools were directed to review: dress code, discipline, homework, protection of instructional time, and assignment of students to class and programs. And then last year, we reviewed, or each school had to review their school mascot. And although you may think mascot, how could that be something that needed to be filtered through the REAP? Well, depending on what the mascot is, it may be offensive to a particular group of people, and we don't want any mascot to be offensive to a group of people. Lastly, we have something called the District REAP Committee. I lead that committee. It meets once a month, and there is a member from every division in central office, and we come together to meet once a month. And at these meetings, we review REAPs. Sometimes REAPs are brought to us to give feedback, but the team is assembled to ensure that the REAP becomes fibrous throughout not only JCPS, but in central office. We have over 400 REAPs that have been items that have been filtered through the REAP. It is a policy that we have to filter MOUs, memorandum of agreements, memorandum of understanding, MOU, MOA, memorandum of agreement, and professional service contracts. And the dashboard was created with Dr. Florence Chang and her team, and it gives us a snapshot of REAPs in central office. We're able to look at it in a way where we can measure impact. We're beginning to measure impact. Look at how many people were a part of the REAP. It connects it to the tenets in the racial equity policy. And there's a lot of neat information that is captured on this dashboard, which allows us to be able to review it and to figure out where we might need some additional training or resources. These are scenarios that are often used when we present this presentation to schools and maybe administrators, because in all honesty, the best way to really understand the REAP is to filter an item through the REAP. And so those are just some of the examples that we use. I wanted to highlight this particular page right here because we have several resources available. We have examples, we have the template, we have the best practice guide, we have the instructions for central office guide that I shared with you. Under Dr. Shauna Stinton's page on SBDM website, there's also videos with Dr. Marshall explaining the purpose of the REAP and talking about how it connects to the racial equity policy. And then on our own website, there's also additional resources. And before I stop, I'm actually going to stop sharing right now momentarily because I want to show you actually where you can find these resources. One moment. Hold on 1 second. Okay, here we go. All right, so hopefully everyone can see this now. Hold on. Okay, can everybody see this now? It should be the DEP website. I just wanted to draw your attention. It's right here on the right-hand side. You see the REAP best practices, the policy. You also see all the relevant documents that you would need if you were looking for additional support for the REAP. Here's the template. So I just wanted to point all of those out. And then right here, where's Shauna's page? Under SBDM, don't see it. Oh, there it is. Under SBDM for our council members, we also have resources which are located right here. There it is. And I wanted to show you because again, the documents are located here. We have several examples that you can see and then the video. Okay, well, this concludes everything that I had tonight to share with you. I wanted to leave you with my contact information. If I could be of any resource to you regarding the REAP or anything that has to do with what I do in DEP, I would be more than happy to assist you. And I will now turn it over to Ms. Patrick.
You're on mute, Ms. Patrick.
I'm so sorry. At this time, I want to introduce Ms. Michelle Dillett. Ms. Michelle Dillett earned her bachelor's degree in teaching certification in special education from Mary State University. She later received her master's degree along with certificates in education administration, school superintendent, and director of pupil personnel from Western Kentucky University. She is currently the assistant superintendent for teaching and learning at JCPS. She was previously the assistant superintendent for middle schools in Jefferson County Public Schools, where she oversaw 19 middle schools. She has over 25 years of leadership experience in all levels. Ms. Dillard is well known for her knowledge and ability to be a change agent for school turnarounds. Prior to becoming an assistant superintendent, she taught special education, a principal for 7 years in Christian County, and the principal of Seneca High School for over 3 years. Currently, Mrs. Dillard also travels across the county as a solution tree education consultant to help low performing schools. Mrs. Dillard is an advocate for women being able to reach their fullest potential, knowing that they have a lot of obstacles put in their way by society. She believes in being a voice to advocate for equality for all, because if you don't stand up for something, then you'll fall for everything. At this time, I want to introduce Ms. Dillard.
Thank you so much, Ms. Patrick, Dr. Marshall, Ms. Porter, all of those that are here tonight. And everybody who knows I may get my timer here so I can stay on time because I really can talk. So I really just want to appreciate everybody and thank you for your support tonight. It is so important. And as you heard Dr. Mcphail talk about the REAP and the racial equity being one of the pillars that we have 3 pillars: the backpack of success skill, racial equity, and culture and climate. And they all are important to equity. And so with being the assistant superintendent now of teaching and learning, I am so excited that we are looking in our future state about student learning. We know that our Black and brown kids really are lacking in some of the education. That's where we see a lot of our gaps. And so we are committed in teaching and learning to ensure that we are providing equitable resources and curriculum and looking at that for the. So I just want to go through some things as we begin to think about the future state for student learning, and just excited about that. And this is some work that we carried over when I was assistant superintendent over our Miracle Middle Schools. So when we talk about outdated industrial model of education that is disproportionality and failing our Black and brown students, we know that years ago that there were 10 white men that came together in a room to decide what they thought that education should look like for everybody. So on our future state team for student learning, we did some research. One of the things that I think is very, very important is that, we should have research to back up what it is that we're talking about, not just talking about things that we want to talk about, what makes us feel good, doing things that's best for adults. No, what does the research actually say? And so the research talked about the education system and about the system of poverty and how our children were experiencing toxic environments in schools, how our Black and brown kids, learners don't experience curriculum that's engaging or even relevant to them. One of the things that you will hear Dr. Polio speak a lot about is about student engagement. So we know that if our students are engaged, then they're going to be more likely to learn, and they're going to be more likely to want to stay at that school and see what it is that is learning and that is more tied to what they want to do. So we also have to think about their interest as well. So looking at different pathways. So in middle school, we have just began this year. We had Explore Pathways at 4 of our middle schools. We will be extending that in the middle school area next year to align with the Academies of Louisville that we have for our high schools, so that we can have something that we know that our students are interested in. It talks about smaller learning communities, which I just talked about, that helps with the dropout rate. If we know our students have something that they're interested in, we want to talk about competency-based education over just a regular traditional way of teaching. Stand and delivering, that is not the way that our students want to learn. We want to make sure that they have a higher sense of belonging. If they feel like that they are connected to the school and that they are interested and the school is interested in them and they are providing different opportunities, personalizing learning for them, that they're having clubs and different activities that the students are interested in, and connecting that to the standards that they have to learn, then we know that our students are going to be better equipped to be better when they get out into the world of society, as well as enjoying their educational experience at the elementary, middle, and high school level. We've got to leave the past in the reality. We can't continue to do things, and Dr. Marshall will say, we can't put new things, the old things in new gift wrap and expect there to be changes. We've got to start looking. We can't have the same thing with grading and making sure that kids are just having numbers, or we're looking at, you know, a 92 and saying they have an A. We have to ensure that our kids are getting grade level essential standards. All of our kids are getting the same thing. I'm so tired of hearing people talk about our kids being behind, talking about them being in a deficit. Why don't we meet them where they are and then do what we have to do as educators to improve the learning for them and their outcomes? We know that our students want to learn. Let's stop making all these excuses. That's why I say failure is not an option, because we know parents are doing the best that they can. They are sending kids to school. These kids want to learn. It is our responsibility to ensure that in teaching and learning that we are helping and providing our school with resources so that this is able to take place, and that we're just not looking and doing things the same way as we have done them before. The future is already here. We are going to be bold. We're going to be disruptive and unapologetic for the things that we do when it comes to racial equity in teaching and learning. Dr. Mcphail even talked about the curriculum piece of it. And I'm going to share some things with you later that you will see that we have already been working on racial equity in teaching and learning. So here's this. We can't put old ideas in new gift wrap and then expect that we're going to have a different outcome. It's just not going to happen. So our new reality, augmented. So school anywhere, anytime. We have to start thinking outside of the box. We talk about being innovative all the time, but we don't do innovative things. We try to stay with the same things over again. I talked about grading a little bit earlier. So standards-based grading. We need to look and see, are kids mastering standards? It's not so much about a grade, a B, C, D. If they haven't mastered standards, then they aren't learning. You know, we've got Google Classroom. We've talked about, you know, when we started back to in-person school, that we wanted to ensure that our schools were not going back and teaching was looking the same as it was before the pandemic. That's not what we want to have. So a new way forward, you have seen that. You have seen that on multiple things that JCPS has had, because it is a new way forward. We have to start thinking outside of the box. We have to look at the people who are designing the curriculum. We have to look at, you know, different ways that our students can be engaged, providing professional learning for our teachers as well, to give them what they need to be successful in the classroom. So when we talk about alternatives, we must ask, what attributes, systems, or results do we want to emulate? Who has those? Not who looks like us now, but what are they doing? A lot of people, you can put anything down on paper, but that paper's not going to get up and it's not going to walk. It's not. So we can say things, we can put it down, but it has to be about results and outcomes. So I just really, I'm really adamant about results and outcome, and thinking that data drives all the decisions, or it should, that we have, and whatever it is that we're going to be doing. So thinking about, you know, this is not just affecting, you know, JCPS, it's a national issue that we have. Our community is suffering from this. All of the racial trauma that we have had in our community, in our nation. And so we have to ensure that we're looking at our curriculum, that we are looking at what we're offering. We're looking at the personalized learning that we are providing for our teachers, and making sure that we're differentiating for them. One size will not fit all. We want our teachers to be innovative, and we want them to do differentiation. We must do the same at the adult level for our adults. We must meet our teachers where they are and give them what they need. So our future state is all about prioritizing the Black and brown learners, where we know that we have a gap in the decisions that we make. Teacher competency, as I said, supporting our teachers, making sure that we're giving them what they need. It's easy to say that teachers aren't doing this, teachers aren't doing that, but what are we doing? What is our responsibility as far as helping and providing the support for our teachers so that they are, very successful? The Black experience, designing experiences that reflect this understanding. We want to make sure, again, one size doesn't fit all, that we are ensuring that we are providing things for our Black and brown students that they can relate to, that they can connect to. When we talk about real world, we talk about being relevant. So how are these things relevant for them so that they are able to produce those high quality backpack artifacts? So when they are ready to do their defense at the 5th, the 8th, and when they are seniors, that they have that information when they're going, through. It starts as early childhood. Those students too, we can't forget about early childhood. We always say K through 12, but we have those in early childhood who proceeds, they come before that. And we need to make sure that we have those students, that they are prepared and they're ready as well. So I just want to talk about some curriculum and assessment shifts that we talk about, making sure again that they're culturally inclusive content, having ownership. We should sit down and talk with our students. We don't ask them for feedback enough. We're always thinking about our adults and what's best for adults, but not thinking about our students and seeing how our students are able to help us. And if we want to have a high sense of belonging in our schools, we must have them at the table. We can't be making all these decisions about academics or about social emotional things, non-academic things, and we don't have the people who it's affecting at the table. We can't keep doing things the same way. We have to have flexibility in our schedules, flexibility in pathways based on interest, aptitude, again, starting at kindergarten because they understand more of that. But when we have our adults can do this for our kids in early childhood. Looking at small learning communities. Those are things that we have to look at. We can't just continue to do school the same way or we're going to get the same results. It's time for us to do something different. Be bold, unapologetic, and be disruptive. So there are some goals that we have. And I'm not going to go through all of them individually, but I do want you to see what the 4 goals for teaching and learning that we have. So course selection and curriculum choice, grading feedback and practices, school day and student schedule shifts, and educator support. I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I want to share some more information with you, just so that you can see that as we begin to move through, we've already been doing some things and we are working on branding. Anybody who knows Michelle Dillard, you know that I really look to making sure that I'm very bold, very disruptive, and unapologetic for student learning. And yes, what you heard in my bio is that if you don't stand up for something, you will fall for anything. And anybody who knows me, they know I am strictly about what we can do for students. And so I want you to know we've got some things that have been in place already in teaching and learning. And so, our new hashtag is learning, leading, and impacting. That's what teaching and learning is about. We are going to be impacting learning. And when we talk about learners, we're talking about adults and students. So, I think about these 4 PLC essential questions. What is it that we want our students to learn and be able to do? How do we know that students have learned it? What do we do when students do not learn it? And what do we do when students do learn it? These are the 4 basic questions that we have when we're thinking about PLCs in our school. How do we provide support to our schools? First, we have to know what is it that we want them to learn and be able to do. What does that look like? What is that? So as we begin to think about that, has all to do with the curriculum and instruction. How do we know when students have learned it? That's that assessment piece. Do we always have to just give paper and pencil? No, we don't. We should be very innovative and creative in the ways that we are assessing our students in schools. We want to make sure that we are personalizing that learning, that we're allowing students to do project-based learning, that they're doing projects that they are interested in that's connected and tied to standards. Now, I want to be clear about this. We have to do multiple choice, and we have to do like ORQs, that they call them, open response questions, because that's what we are tested on by the state. And no matter what we say, and no matter what nobody else says, that, you know, we don't need to do standardized testing, it is what it is, that I would say, because that's what we're measured on. And we have to ensure that our students are prepared and they are ready for that. So these are some of the supports that we have done in our teaching and learning to make sure that we are supporting and collaborating with DEP and racial equity. I'm so excited about, you know, what we have done. Just several things here. And I'm going to drop this in the chat so that you'll have that to look at, because there are lots of links in here so that you have resources. So not our ELA have collaborated, and as far as looking at the diverse text, we want to make sure that the texts in our schools are very diverse, that we don't have the text that's just representing one population any longer. As well as our social studies department, I want to move on down to them. We've done a lot with ELA and math. Social studies has been working and collaborating with DEP too to develop, you know, Black historical consciousness, so people are very aware of that. We've got examples in here of that and how they created tools and connecting to critical literacy framework. You know, we've got a lot of resources. I'm going to go down and I'm going to do this because I know my time is winding up, and I want you to just see how much we have grown. Can you see this chart? Just gonna get it. Okay. So we have really been working on trying to identify students of color in our GT, which is gifted and talented. And so if you can see here, so last year for African-American and creativity, we had 25 students. Now we have, you know, 49. So you see the numbers have increased. For leadership, it was 279. And this year we have 466. For ELA, 154, 244. Now, Ms. Dillard, what does that mean? We have a long way to go. The numbers have improved, and I'm not going to sit here and saying like, oh, well, you know, we've done a really great job. We have done a very good job. We have been doing this work for 3 years, and we're putting things in place to move forward, and not only to identify students of color. Now, I want you to know that we are partnering with WKU, Western Kentucky University, and we are recruiting African-American teachers and, you know, Black and brown, you know, teachers in JCPS to get their gifted certification. So to get that endorsement. So that is on the horizon. So I just want you to know, you know, when you think about what can we do in teaching and learning to be able to help improve so that our Black and brown kids are getting the same learning experiences and opportunities as everybody else, we have to change the way our curriculum instruction has been. And our team has done that. And I'm so proud, and I'm just thankful to have an awesome and amazing team. So I want to thank all of them for all the work that they've done. And we believe in continuous improvement, learning by doing. We know that Rome was not built in a day, but we also know together we can do all things. It takes collaboration. We can't be in silos working. We have to come together. Just as our family is together and we sit down at the dinner table to eat dinner. We don't do that very often anymore because there's so many things that come, you know, into play. But we have to think about that. When we think about collaboration, true collaboration is people sitting down at the table together, creating whatever it is that they, you know, want to, the outcome of the product, so that everybody's voice is heard. And we have some work to do on that when it comes to bringing in the community, but that's a part of what we're doing with our future state. So I'll just leave this with you to just let you know that I believe, and teaching and learning believes, that we are going to make a difference because we will be learning, leading, and impacting as we continue to move forward in this future for student learning. Thank you so much for your time. There's so much more I could, go on and on, but I'm going to respect that. And I do have my timer. Oh, I got 54 minutes. And see who was looking at that 54 minutes. No, 40 seconds. But I do, again, want to thank Dr. Marshall, DEP, for allowing me this opportunity. Thank Mr. Dillard for putting this together, Ms. Patrick for being the host, Ms. Porter for always being there and being supportive, who has been there and been very supportive from the beginning. And I also want to I know this may or may not be appropriate, but it is what it is. Congratulations, Ms. Porter, on your award that you received too. So just continue to be a mentor to us. And, we have to be bold. We have to be disruptive and unapologetic if we want to help our Black and Brown students improve their learning. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm very humbled and honored. And if teaching and learning can do anything for you, everybody knows, just, you can reach out to me, email me, text, call, whatever it is that you want to do. Thank you for this opportunity. Ms. Patrick, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. This portion of the Education Forum is designated for you to ask questions. We have allotted 20 minutes for Q&A. To avoid talking over each other, we ask that you unmute your mic and ask your question, then mute the mic back. After asking your question, I'm sorry. Wow. I want to take a moment and say thank you, Ms. Dillard, because everything you said has always been on my heart. And during my experience of teaching, I just want to say thank you. I am so glad that Brown and Black children are being discussed on a regular basis. We will get to as many questions as we possibly can under the time frame. So we're going to start right now, and I'm going to set my timer. And if we can begin right now with questions. Anybody? And if not, I'll ask the first question. I don't see anybody unmuting. Well, I can't really. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to ask the first question. The first question I want to ask is to Dr. Mcphail. Dr. Mcphail, when I was teaching 16 years ago, there was a tool called the SISI document. Is this tool that you all are using evaluate schools who follow the REAP initiatives? Does it do that?
I'm not familiar with the SSI document that you just mentioned, but if you ask, is the REAP an evaluative type of thing? It is a tool. It's just an instrument for us to use to ensure that we are not inadvertently having a negative impact on marginalized students. So it's a tool, but it has no evaluation type things associated with it.
Okay, is it a part of the school plan?
Yes, we encourage, and all schools are encouraged to use it in their school racial equity plans. Schools have been trained. Schools use it in SBDM policies. So the expectation is for every school and its leadership to use it, yes.
And someone just put down that's an old standard. Yes, it is, but it was a tool used. Yes, I was just asking that question. So if I used the REAP tool and I said we're going to do all of this that we said we're going to do, and I don't implement it in the way that we stated, is there any type of repercussion for not doing it that way?
Well, I can't really speak to the repercussion. To be honest, principals report to assistant SUPs, who then report to chief of schools, Robert Moore. So he is the person that supervises the assistant SUPs who supervise principals. And they are on top of the REAPs in terms of they know who is completing them, but in terms of repercussions, I can't speak to that.
And let me add real quick, Ms. Patrick. Ms. Patrick, let me add real quick.
Okay, go ahead,
There needs to be, this is John Marshall, there needs to be repercussions. If we do a REAP and we realize that it is impacting Black and Brown students, and we fill it out and nothing happens, where John Marshall is going for principals and educators on here is that there does need to be repercussions. I think we have gotten to the point where, unless we want the document to be compliant, if you recognize that this is mistreating everybody named Diane and everybody named Michelle and everybody named Abdul, but we're not doing anything about it, the document just becomes something filled out and put in a folder.
Right.
So what we're moving for, and as we talk about the evaluation and review of random REAPs, what the next step is, if Marshall High School has done these REAPs, but still practicing the practice, you heard it here first or last, or whatever, we need to move to repercussions. Whatever that means is what that means. But area superintendents, Chief Moore, myself, need to raise the level of accountability to not play around with that.
I'd just like to add to that, since I've been in this new role for 2 months, and that would, I mean, and I was an assistant soup over the middle schools 2 months ago. And I would say, I won't say repercussions, but we do use that, or we use that to be able to coach schools if they didn't have what they needed in there. And Dr. Mcphail does a very great job when she gives the feedback. It is very helpful for us to be able to sit down with the principal and to talk to them and to, you know, provide the feedback to them, and to then we expect for them to make changes, and we would follow up. So I could, you know, I can speak to that to let you know that, because we know that if we don't take that and we don't do anything with the feedback that is given, that we are harming our Black and Brown kids. So and then that's something that becomes a part you know, of growth plans and things too, so that we follow up on that.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any other questions? I'm looking on the chat to see if there are any questions. I see a lot of wonderful comments, but no questions. Well, let me ask a question this time to Ms. Dillard. Does the curriculum that you use today allow for teacher creativity?
So the curriculum that we use today, I would say we are moving toward that. Teachers are allowed to be innovative. We basically, what we provide for them is that we give them a framework. So they have the instructional framework that they can use. And then teachers have the ability to be as creative as they want to with that. What I think is lacking is knowing how. Anthony Muhammad talks about will and skill. Some people may have the will to do it, but they don't have the skill. And so then that's where my department for the professional development comes in, for us to be able to help them to be able to do that. But yes, they do have the ability to be able to be very creative in what it is that they want to do with their curriculum. It's just a matter of knowing how to do that.
Okay, I think some questions are coming in. Ms. Baker, Dr. Baker, I'm at Duval Education Center, and we are creating a racial equity committee. What should that look like, Dr. Mcphail?
That's a great question, and I'll be happy to work with you on that. It should be a diverse group, of course, and have a focus. Are you going to look at policies? Are you going to look at practices? Hopefully you will be filtering items through the REAP, but you do need to have a purpose in terms of making sure that you're not, just not meeting for meeting's sake. And I would be more than happy to work with you, because we have some other schools that encompass or have that type of team, but always keeping in the forefront, how is this impacting our Black and Brown students? So are you looking at policies or practices?
Okay, we're talking about language justice. We kind of seem to have a problem with language justice and cultural, just maybe like cultural, where parents can bring in their cultural items, but we haven't started yet. We just met this week. But I just really didn't know what all it entails.
Okay, well, feel free to reach out to me and we can connect offline. Another great person is Crystal Hawkins, who works closely with families. But I'll be more than happy to help you, Dr. Baker.
Okay, thank you.
I guess I'm gonna go back to, seems like 16 years seems like so long ago, but it used to be a time in the district. I don't know if they meant to tell teachers this, but they were requiring teachers to teach the same way. And that's why I had that question about creativity, using a script to teach. And when you are an experienced teacher, that is, an experienced teacher finds that insulting. Do you all, in your curriculum now, do you all allow, do you want all teachers to use a script to teach, Mrs. Dillard? Are they allowed to look at the curriculum, sit down and say, oh, okay, well, I'm going to do this. Is there room for that with what's going on now?
There is room for that, for teachers to do that. And so one of the things that we have that all teachers, you know, in the district should be familiar with is our teacher backpack. And within our teacher backpack, the teacher backpack has lots of resources in there. And so when I talked about, you know, the framework, we have the curriculum framework that says, you know, that shows them exactly like, you know, what it is as far as priority standards they should teach. But the second piece, what we have are, and I referenced this earlier, was our instructional frameworks. So the instructional frameworks is just specifically, it just talks about an outline. In fact, it really helps our teachers to be able to know how much they should be doing as far as review, what they should be doing as far as guiding and engaging, and then explore and apply. So we want to make sure they get to that high rigorous part, but it's just an instructional framework, a guide for them. Teachers are able to be as flexible and innovative as they want to. We don't have that curriculum, and I'm very familiar with what you're talking about, where it says, say this, do this.
Yes.
How many times, you know, so you know, what we have now for them is the instructional framework does talk about, you know, how much time they should spend, or feel like, you know, 8% of the time, for instance, say like if they're doing a mathematics 6 through 12 workshop approach, that, you know, just for the review and focus, that should just be 8% of the time. Because you don't want to be, again, as I said, stand up and just delivering. We want kids to be engaged and explore and to be able to get into and synthesize the activity. So it is very flexible now.
Okay, we have another question from Ms. Jones. She wants to know, are there resources to share at this time that focus on racial equity in ECE?
I will take that. I'm sorry. So Dr. Angelique Shear and Kim Chevalier, who is the chief of ECE, do have some resources. I don't think they are in mass production. And we have to remember too that the racial equity policy is older than the ECE division. At the last board meeting, Ms. Porter and them received the ECE plans, and one of the plans was is to build out the ECE work around racial equity, curriculum design, and how to go about doing that. What I will make sure happens, and I think Angelique, I'll need to circle back around, but I think that team is supposed to come in front of this body as well and present. But there are some things in the works around ECE, twice gifted, and gifted and talented for ECE students, as well as just to reach and teach gifted and talented students or ECE students.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Back to that question again. She meant to say, she was saying ECE, but she was referring to early childhood education. I'm sorry. That's what she was talking about. So do you have something as far as resources to share for early childhood, Ms. Dillard?
So the early childhood is underneath Dr. Alicia Averett. It is not in my department, but there are multiple resources, yes, for early childhood that that would be able to, you know, we could share with her. So if you would like to put your email or send me a direct message with your email address, then I can make sure that I get those resources to you. And as far as the question, as far as K-TIP, we don't have K-TIP any longer. What we have in our professional development partner department, because the state did away with K-TIP, and that is, we have a mentoring program, and that's under Dr. Isaacs, Tara Isaacs. And so she has a mentoring program. So for all new teachers, we do have someone that's mentoring them, and they go, and it's all year long to work with them. So just wanted to make sure that we talked about that. And let's see, there's a question.
There's a question about summer learning. Is
Yeah,
there?
so we are working and finalizing our summer learning. We're going to take the plan to our assistant superintendents next Wednesday at the meeting. So there is information about summer learning that we are having. And so we are looking for our teachers. We're saying they're going to be talent scouts. As I spoke about earlier, we want to stop thinking about that deficit mindset, and we want them to go out and find the talents of these students. And so we have multiple learning hubs that we're going to have, but we are just finalizing those plans, and we're going to present that to the assistant soups on Wednesday at our meeting, and then they will be getting that out to the schools. And then our communications department will be getting that out to our families in the community.
We also have a question. I don't know if it's a question. It isn't a question, it's a statement, but I think she's given us suggestions that we need to invest money in buying materials and books for diverse and culturally relevant literature. So does the district, I know the district is getting ready to do personal libraries. Is that correct? Am I correct on that?
Yeah,
So
we do. And yes, ma'am. We will have some, we already have some culturally relevant literature at schools, but we have two professional learning libraries. So with Dr. Reynolds at our library media services, she's the executive director over that. We do have some culturally relevant literature there. And then we will also be creating one for in our PD department that will encompass this. In fact, I just signed off on a PO today for that. So we are looking at getting culturally relevant literature for our at the district level. And I think we have a lot of schools that have looked at that too. So my department with Dr. Price, Susan Price and her team, they have been looking at all of the books that they would use at ELA at all levels to make sure that they are recommending that there are books that are culturally relevant to all of the different cultures that we service in JCPS.
we have about 4 more minutes.
I have a question, Ms. Patrick, if I
Okay.
may ask it.
Yes.
With all of the REAP and the curriculum and learning and all of the things going on to address deficits, do you have any data that shows that students are learning better, that there are improvements in ABCs, 1, 2, 3s? Are we doing these things and not seeing any improvements, or are we seeing improvements? And what data do you have to show that?
I'll jump in first, Mother.
Thank you, son.
What we have seen and what we do understand, and we have models in our STEAM Academy and in Du Bois and in just the research, which what Ms. Dillard was talking about. When we start being more inclusive and when we start doing REAPs and we start actually pivoting from adult pleasures to student needs, we have seen a sense of improvement. You saw that in gifted and talented, the biggest increase for our students of color in gifted and talented was when we spread out what qualifies for gifted. The majority of our gifted students have been qualified in leadership. 3 years ago, when we weren't looking at leadership and it was literally just ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, if you will, it was lower. So when we start talking about racial equity and we start qualifying gifts as opposed to what is defined as a gift from a very narrow Eurocentric pattern, you see these improvements. You have also seen that sense of belonging, although still low in certain schools, Du Bois, STEAM, Central, and some other ones, it goes up when the curriculum goes up. And then of course we have student voice and student agency. and parent responses that are saying schools that are doing this and teachers that are doing this, we are moving forward. But I mean, it's very simple, it's very clear. When we do academic changes and when we center ourselves around students as opposed to adult conveniences, and we're not cowards and make real decisions for students and not political decisions for governing bodies or agencies, all this stuff moves forward. And that's kind of what we're seeing as we lead this work forward, as the research supports.
And so,
Thank-
and to further that, Dr. Marshall, then that is what we're looking at. So when we know that we have, again, as I talked about students, the data that we're using, so the data is the GT data that we have, but academically, the data that we most recently have, and we all know because of the COVID, is just the MAP data that we had given a couple of years ago. And within that, we would see that we have some of our students that, I mean, that's why we're focusing on, you know, our Black and brown kids, that the gap is closing. It's not closing fast enough. The gap is still there. We still have work that we need to do, as I said. And so that's the reality of it. That is the truth. Our kids are still behind. I do feel like, and we haven't given MAP because of being in this setting right now, but I do believe that if we were able to give MAP, that we would be able to see that there are some improvements based off of these innovative things that teachers have done that they weren't doing, you know, before. But do we have a long way to go? Yes, we do. Are we making some improvements? I think we are, but we got a long way to go, and time is of essence for us to start doing things differently so that our students can get and learn what they need to learn.
Thank you.
Mrs. Dillard, I have a question about the GT program at Western, that the collaboration program. Is that any cost to teachers who want to participate in that?
There is not going to be a cost. We're going, you know, we're fortunate and blessed enough to have all this CARES money. We are going to pay for that for teachers if they want to get that GT endorsement. And then we are also, I talked about competency-based education. We have 2 opportunities that we're getting ready to roll out to our teachers as well. And so we hope that they take an opportunity to do this through Spalding, to learn more about competency-based and to be able to go through and get that training, and through the University of Kentucky. And we are going to cover the cost for that as well, from teaching and learning through our CARES funding and through some grant money that we have. So we will be sending that out, but teachers will not have to pay for that. So if they have a rank 3, they can go through this competency-based education and then get their rank 2. And if they have a rank 2, they can get a rank 1. So we have some innovative things in place, and that, you know, will be able to help where teachers don't have to pay out of their pocket.
Okay, thank you. And believe it or not, we made it towards our 20 minutes at the end of it. I would like at this time that we conclude with these questions and answers. And now we will hear from Mr. Don Dillard, Satellite Office Supervisor, who will give you information about the next NAACP and JCPS Community Forum.
Thank you. The first of all, before I forget, there's going to be a link in the chat box that for the people that want to apply for the PD credit and the ELA credit. So just there's going to be a link there. Just click on it, answer the question, so that make sure that you get your credit. The next event will be May the 13th, which will be our last event this school year. May 13, 2021, we will have Dr. Carmen Coleman, which is the Chief Academic Officer, Dina Dawsett, the Chief of Research, Jimmy Adams, which is the Chief of Human Resources, Cordelia Harden, which is the Chief Financial Officer, and then also Chris Perkins, who is the Chief of Operations. So basically we have like a lot of the chiefs coming in, speak with us next month. So far since January, we have had other chiefs here. So I think Dr. Marshall's here today, and then we had Robert Moore and a lot of other leaders. So we're trying to bring the top leaders so that the NAACP can kind of see where the pulse of the district is. And special thanks to Dr. Polio and Dr. Marshall, because they're putting a lot of leverage enough to say that this program is important enough to get the best speakers to come forward to us. Now, next year, we are going to continue this. And so if you want to hear speakers, anybody in the district speak, or you need to contact Mcphail Patrick. She's the educational chairperson of the NAACP, because we want to hear from you to get your input so that we can get you the information you want. I will say this for Dr. Marshall and Michelle, Dillard, and Dr. Mcphail. I'm very, very excited as far as the direction of educating our Black and Brown students. Because I can just be around Dr. John Marshall. He's trying to take the racial equity work to a whole different level. I mean, he's a lot more serious and more demanding than I have ever seen him, and that's good for our kids. But the racial equity work is almost a model for people across the country. I mean, people are using what DEP is using as like a standard of how you're supposed to do it. I know Dr. Marshall, has been named professor at Brown University and also on the international panel of Harvard University. Also, I know that the work that Dr. Mcphail is doing, that's starting to reach outside education. People are starting to use that model to look at other, not just educational policies, but other policies. And so I'm excited about that. I'm excited with my wife, Michelle, and her new position. And the reason why I'm very excited about it, if you know anything about Michelle, she's about results. And so, so when about results, about kids learning. And so hopefully the things, I've seen her go across the country, helping other schools, helping schools turn around schools. And now I'm glad that and with Dr. Marshall providing the racial equity piece and Michelle trying to change some of the academic piece, I'm excited about the potential of what we can do. Last but not least, I want to say special thanks to two people that make this program possible. First of all, Mcphail Patrick, the educational chairperson. She's putting a lot of work in. I mean, we talk probably say every week, 2 weeks to get this together, and she basically sends out all the information as far as outside the community. And I think when she took this job, she didn't realize how hard it was as far as how much time commitment, but she has always done it with a smile. And so and because this has not been like easy to putting this on Zoom. It hasn't. We didn't really know what we were doing in January. Now we kind of got this down pat. Also, I want to thank Dr. Abdul Sharif. He's a person that he makes all the flyers, he does all the technology, he sends the information throughout the district, and he's a very, very talented person. And I think that a lot of people don't realize how talented he is, and some of the branding that the DEP has made nationally is under Dr. Marshall's leadership. But it's also with Abdul just putting a good brand of how racial equity should be seen by all people. But I remind you, May 13, we want you to come. We've been having really, really good turnout. So we just want you to come and listen to our chiefs to wrap the year up. I'll turn it back to Mcphail Patrick.
This concludes our forum tonight. I look forward to our next forum, May 13th. I want you to be safe, get vaccinated, and have a good night. Thank you.